So I love it. It's great. Okay, Janet.
I was just going to add, I might use it almost every time, because what happens to me invariably the first 2 times I'm really nice. The third time I just go wham, and that's the time like they were with their wife with chemotherapy.
So when you say, okay.
It's almost like at least ask the question the first time,
sure.
And then judge your response.
Let me just ask for clarification. When you said the first 2 times I was really nice, so what did you do?
Even if the first 2 times we're asking the question for clarification.
So is everything okay?
Exactly.
All right.
And then let me say, for me, my understanding is about the 3rd time, then there's a pattern. But even if you make the assumption the 3rd time, because the first 2 times there was a bad pattern, I guess for me, invariably, the 3rd time I make the assumption, and then there was a valid reason.
So just
for me, my comment would be, it's always good to at least clarify first, and then you can adjust your behavior after.
Absolutely. Adjust their behavior, adjust your expectations, right? If you really need this person's expertise and he's attending another meeting, and if changing the time isn't possible, as long as we're all aware, right? It's like, I'll get you in just 1 second, Annabeth. It's like being at a restaurant and it taking forever for the waiter or waitress to deliver your food. How much more patient are you when the waiter or waitress comes over and says, "Sir, I'm really sorry, but the kitchen's backed up today. We're on top of things, but I just wanted to let you know. Oh, and here's a free drink on the house." I'm exaggerating just to make the point, but some do that. Some do that, right? Because it only takes one bad experience to send you and all your friends away for good. So just managing expectations, right? Okay. And the other point I just want to make is when you said, "I'm being nice," and I'm asking questions for clarification, the only question I have in my mind is how deep did the conversation go? So, I wonder what being nice means. And we could talk some more offline about that. Annabeth?
But what if Bruno comes in saying that he's late because of traffic, as you did just now, then will you still ask him, is everything okay? Because he already gave you the reason.
So, okay, let's use that example, and then I'm going to leave the last 6 minutes for the even harder example, okay? So if Bruno gives what you think is a not exactly fantastic excuse like I did, "Oh, well, traffic's really terrible," what would you say to follow up with me on that?
I would say that I had no problems in the traffic. I took the same route.
Okay, because that works how?
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
I would say how I feel, actually.
Okay.
You know, okay, I understand, but we have a meeting. We were together during 20 minutes and we missed the first part, so you should
Careful, you were doing well. Stay away from my, you should. You should. You were doing great. We're having a meeting. We're getting a lot accomplished. And you said, "I feel uncomfortable." Good, own it. I feel uncomfortable. I feel frustrated. Okay? And that's really important because as soon as you should on someone, it's supposed to sound that way, okay, you cause defensiveness. You run the risk of causing defensiveness. So let's try another one. So Bruno's late again. You've asked, is everything okay? And even if you think he's lying, okay, the goal is?
Improve the performance.
Improve performance. Good enough. Good enough. So what could you say that would be consistent with that goal? And I like where you were going with that. This is an important team, right? We have a lot of important work to get done here.
We cannot have the meeting without you or something. That's
Good.
Important to the meeting.
Take your responsibility.
Yeah, you're really important to the meeting. And?
Give me a call to let me know that you're going to be late.
Okay, could you, at least in the future, give me a call? Or, is this a good time? Is this a good time? You know, of course, again, there's no right answer, right? Saying nothing means saying it's okay. And what you say, of course, will impact the relationship amongst everyone in the team. I think we got a lot of mileage on this one. Let me give you the last one. So, while making a presentation to the client, your boss interrupts you. Is this all sounding familiar, some of you? Ouch. Okay, now this one clearly is different. First, you have a stranger. Second, you have a peer. And third, your boss. Okay? Think to yourselves silently for just a moment or two. How would you react? And not just what your norm is, but how would you react in a way that you think would improve performance. Anybody have a suggestion?
It's tricky because the presentation needs to stay smooth for the client.
Yes.
So you should try to give the impression to the client that is coming to participate and that it's normal, and then you could say, oh yeah, so it's
Okay.
a good point. And
So
then,
play along.
yeah,
Okay.
if you can.
When she first started speaking, your body language suggested you weren't in agreement.
Oh no, I would agree. In front of the client, it has to be unified.
Okay.
If I would talk, if I felt uncomfortable, I would talk with my boss afterwards. But in front of the client, I would
Okay.
make
You
it
call the client later and excuse for the boss or boss.
Well, that's another option. Okay. So, let's assume, for the sake of argument, that this is the presentation that you've worked on, that you're making. Your boss is in the room. You, for all intents and purposes, believe that you've done quite a good job up till this point where your boss kind of takes the clicker and says, well, as Carlos was saying, click, click. How many of you would say something during the presentation? Okay. Somehow I'm not surprised. Carlos. What would you say, Carlos?
Well, this happens. I mean, this is not like this is out of the blue. I think we all think this.
Yes.
And there's room. It's just what we do, which is making proposals and talking to clients, etc. These things happen all the time.
Yes.
So there's room for even disagreement amongst the team. Okay, because we all there listening to the client.
Okay.
So it depends to what extent, but this could happen, and it could be disagreement in the team when talking to a client. So
I don't disagree.
Okay.
What would you do?
Well, if it's interrupting to say something that it's against what is being presented, I cannot say anything.
Okay, so you'll
But
stand
if there
by.
is a major disagreement that is not going to be solved in front of the client.
Okay, so kind of like you said, you kind of go along with it and make it look as though this were planned. Okay, I thought your hand was also up. No. Okay. What? So anybody, Persita?
Well, if the sale is made at the end of the day, I'd say nothing.
At all?
If we're getting what we want,
Okay.
doesn't make any difference.
But are you getting what you want?
Well, I don't know, but I mean, if I'm working somewhere, we have an objective. If we reach it.
Well,
if we don't reach it, maybe there would be room for a discussion.
I would argue in this case, Persita, there are multiple objectives, right? One is with the client, and the other is with your relationship with the boss. Because if you say nothing either during or after the meeting, and I know I sound like a broken record now, you say, it's okay. Take over my presentation anytime you like, because that makes me feel really confident in my job. Okay? So, yes?
I think what I would do is I would play along, assuming that my boss is not going to go against what I'm saying or selling or whatever, but pick it up in the end and confirm what he has said and take ownership of my own presentation again.
Great. So let me push you a little further. Meeting ends, client's happy, they sign. What, if anything, do you say to your boss?
I think I would sit down and talk with him afterwards, not, of course.
Okay,
with the
I'm your
client,
boss.
but, yeah.
Speak to me. Should I get a little closer?
No, it's okay. I think, were you not comfortable with what I was saying?
Okay, so stop right there.
What was the reason you took over?
Okay. Were you not comfortable with what I was saying? Is there a reason you took over? Okay. What do you think about that question? You look unsure.
Well, you immediately undermine yourself. Sorry.
Okay.
Well, for me, it's a bit too direct stuff.
Too direct.
Yeah.
Okay, how would you start
It's
it?
not like the presentation went well. Thank you for finishing the presentation.
Oh. Okay. Now again, I'm a little transparent, as you could probably tell. There's no right answer, right? But any response is going to have a reaction.
Yeah, sure.
Well, you said something that a lot of us reacted to. What was it? What was it that we all reacted to? Not the presentation went well.
Yeah, and I said thank you. Yeah, that could be a sound.
Could? You said thank you for finishing my presentation.
But did you hear that? It could be a bit ironic.
Okay.
Be direct, so you're pissed off.
So, I mean, I don't know about you, but if this were me, I'd be a little pissed off. I might be more than a little pissed off. I'm just trying to be kind, okay? So what is it that you would try to accomplish in a conversation with your boss following the presentation?
That you don't want him to do it again.
You don't want him to do it again?
Convey to him how upset you are.
Convey your feelings, okay? Janet?
I think also something like it makes me feel demotivated.
Yeah.
So in a certain way convey consequences that are negative.
And remember when I was picking on you before, I said don't shit on anyone, but instead take responsibility, right? I felt demotivated when? Because the bottom line is, if you're trying to persuade someone, we talked about this earlier, you want them to decide, ultimately. You want to make the case, and you want them to decide. When you shit on them, they get defensive and they kind of push back. But if you say, I felt demotivated. I didn't say anything about you. I didn't tell you how to feel or what you should do next time. I'm just giving you some information about my feelings when you interrupted my presentation and took over. What you do with that information is up to you. Okay? But it shouldn't be payback. Oh, you screwed me in the meeting? Ha ha ha. Let me tell you something. Okay? That's not going to achieve anything. I realize we're out of time. If I could have maybe 2 more minutes of your time. Just, and I suppose we can make the slides available. Is that something that we do, Annabeth? Okay. Because I did want to just give you one, and I think you kind of pulled us in the direction, both you and Janet. Here's a potential model that you can use. It's not passive, it's not, I always hear this too, oh, son of a, under our breaths, okay? Because that doesn't get the point across either. Here's a model you might try. It sounds something like my perspective, right? I noticed that, for example, or I got the sense that. Tentative. This is, because remember, my perspective is my reality. Your perspective could be completely different. So kind of give the context where you're coming from. Talk about your feelings. I was demotivated. I was frustrated. I was unhappy when. And what you would like. Okay? This might be a little wordy, but if you think about it, if you were on the receiving end of something like that, would you be defensive?
No.
It's straight talk, right? It's not bullying. It's not, oh, thanks for interrupting. Okay? So it's pretty clear. And this is the thing, what's really interesting, when I talk about assertive communication, oftentimes people equate that with aggressive. And they're very different. Assertive is very clearly what I said in the title. It's saying what you mean, meaning what you say. Standing up for yourself and being clear, not sarcastic, we're going to pass this one, not being sarcastic, not being indirect, sending hints, lobbing it over the fence and hoping they get it, okay? And not asking questions when what you really need to do is make a very clear statement. I was unhappy the last time I was at the picnic because I would like not to go. I know it's important for you, so let's talk about what options we could find that make us both happy, okay? Pay attention to the receiver. If you see that their response to you suggests that they're unhappy, that's an opportunity for you to continue the conversation. Oh, did I say something that didn't sit well with you? Let's talk some more about it, okay? So always pay attention to what's going on. And also, of course, we see a lot of this more and more, electronic courage. I wouldn't say this to your face, but I'll send you an email. Okay, be careful about that. And then what I said earlier about these patterns, we often cause our own problems when we accept and allow the way other people treat us and talk to us, that if we don't change those patterns, if you give people the control to make you miserable, they will. Okay? Any other questions before we break? Kevin?
Can you just answer the question that you asked us? How would you answer the question if your presentation was interrupted by your boss? What would you exactly say to that person afterwards?
Again, it depends on what's happening in the conversation. I would probably try to find a way in the presentation, if I felt very confident in it, to say, great point, Kevin, thanks for adding that. Now, as I was saying, okay, I'm not trying to be funny, by the way. Okay, all right.
What would you say in the time when you can actually confront your boss afterwards in a one-on-one?
Well, I just wanted to separate the two. Okay, so I would say something during the presentation. Okay, and if he said, no, I've got it. Well, that would really piss me off, but okay. And it would sound something like what we just constructed together after the meeting to say, excuse me, boss, but do you have a few minutes? Okay, so again, I want to get his attention first.
And regardless, let's make sure this doesn't happen again. Or how can we work it out?
Now, again, hold on.
That is what you're trying to solve. I mean, regardless of the situation,
yes.
You don't want that to happen again.
Brilliant.
Let's work together.
Brilliant.
So it doesn't happen again.
Brilliant, I agree, but everybody would agree with me when I say it's not always what you say, it's how you say it. When you say, let's make sure this doesn't happen again, what you are saying is, let us. What you are saying is, you need to follow my prescription for how you should behave. Okay, Janet?
Your boss might be quite happy that that's happening, because that's how they like to do business.
I'm just suggesting to you, when you say, let's work this out so that it doesn't happen again, you run the risk because you're suggesting to the boss that he needs to behave this way.
It could be worse. You make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yes, it could, Carlos. Okay. You're right. There's a continuum. There's a continuum. So I know you all need to get back. I'll continue to answer the question. Okay, I'm on the spot here. So what I would say, if you were my boss, Kevin, I would say, do you have a few minutes right now?
Yes.
Okay. You know, during the presentation when you stepped in and took over, I was a little bit surprised because when we talked about what we were going to present, it was clear that I was doing the presenting. Was there something that I said or did that wasn't consistent with what we agreed on?
Now, when you're saying a little bit, are you, obviously you weren't a little bit surprised, you were very much surprised.
Look, again, there's no right answer, but in that conversation just now and what I said to you, were you defensive?
No.
No. Did I open the door to the conversation? Okay. So you have to use the phrases I showed before. Some of them may look very strange to you. And of course, we could talk about cultural differences, and the Dutch tend to be more straightforward, and the Chinese tend to be a little bit more saving face, and we know that, okay? So you have to say what works for you. I might understate it a little bit just to get the attention, especially because there's a power difference. But I wouldn't say, oh, I didn't mind at all the fact that you, okay? So I would say I was a little bit uncomfortable or I was unhappy. You use the phrases that work for you. But in that initial start to the conversation, I believe, if you agree with me, I opened the door to the conversation. Let's talk about it. You might not have even noticed that you did it. It would have been, maybe on your part, completely unconscious. Nadine, you were going to add something.
Well, I was going to say your response ties into what Janet said earlier when she said the first 2 times I might let it go, and then the 3rd time, whack! So I would be feeling like you would actually rage. So what I would do in the moment,
yes.
what I've learned is I have to self-manage my own emotions in the moment. That's completely inappropriate, even though I'm feeling it, to express it. And I'd have to give myself enough time to cool down enough notches that I could speak in that kind of very reasonable tone.
Knowing yourself. This is absolutely key to being an effective communicator. So it may not be for Nadine right after the presentation, do you have a few minutes? You need to go have a cigarette, have a cup of coffee or something. And maybe, and I'm not kidding, because the other example I was going to give you, time permitting, was to give you an opportunity to practice speaking assertively in a situation that you're about to face. And the reason I do that is because some of these difficult conversations are hard enough to have when we're role-playing, let alone in reality. And so just writing a script, using that framework, practicing with someone. I mean, let's say this is something that's really been on your mind for a while. You were trying to be nice, and nice has caused, essentially some mistreatment of you. And now it's time to really step up and say, this is not working for me anymore. We need to talk about this. Yeah. So I would encourage you to write yourself a script. What is it that you want to say? What is the goal? Because if your goal is, that's the 3rd time, damn it, and I'm going to set this straight once and for all. Come on. Now I've got Carlos's language, okay? So, does that help, Kevin?
I like that. And it was interesting to hear, how would you respond to that? I guess it was a longer discussion, but you were being very diplomatic. I was a little bit surprised. Whereas if I was your subordinate, you might be much more like, I wasn't a little surprised. I was very surprised, and that was inappropriate.
Sure. Again, I don't want to tell you, you asked for a specific response from me, I gave it to you. I am a little diplomatic, believe it or not. And I do that because, again, my goal here is not to fight fire with fire. It's to open the door to the conversation. It's to ensure that I'm not setting up a pattern, consciously or unconsciously, that's only going to bite me in the future. And let's remember, the deeper those grooves are dug in those patterns, the more difficult it is to overcome. because you've basically established this is the pattern that we're going to work together under. Okay? I'm happy to chat more. I love this. I mean, the conversation's been great. You're welcome to leave, and I thank you for coming. And for those of you who want to stay, thank you.